Hey guys, welcome back to the forge, where today we're going to do part 2 of the Chinese Bowie knife refurbishing video. And we're going to go ahead and get this handle made and get this thing cleaned up and finished up. And we may have to do 3 parts. I don't know. We'll see how far I get today, but we've got quite a lot to do. And gluing the handles, another piece of wood together like this one here that we burned up the other day and poked a hole in the side of it. So we'll get some more wood cut, we'll get a new handle block prepared, and see if we can't get this knife finished up today. But if things get going a little too long, we may have to split this into a 3rd part. So anyway, as always, I really appreciate you watching, and if you like what you see, click the like button. And if you'd like to see more, and you're interested in the kind of things that I do, then go ahead and subscribe, and you can set up your account where you'll get notifications every time I upload a new video. So without further ado, let's get started on this Chinese Bowie knife restoration. Okay, so we've cut some pieces of wood here for our new handle, and the way we're going to do it is we're going to alternate back and forth like so between the light. Whoops. Anyway, we're going to alternate back and forth like this between the light and the dark pieces, kind of like this. And that's what our handle will look like. We'll get this glued together first. 1 minute. I want it to be pretty close. Ooh, we're a little short. I need one more piece of the dark wood. So I'll get that cut, but then we're going to glue all these pieces together like this. You know, and of course that'll get all trimmed up, but that's the general idea. I think that'll look pretty nice on that knife. So we'll get that handled. Okay. So we've got our handle scale pieces all cut here the way we want them. Now we're just going to take a piece of this 60 grit sandpaper, and we're just going to rough up the back of each one of these. You want to kind of score. You want to kind of score the back of it, because this is pretty hard wood, and so when you cut it, when you saw it, it's just as smooth as glass. You want something for your epoxy to stick to. So there's that one. You know, and you don't have to work on these for an hour. I mean, you just need to scuff it up. Just put some gouges in there, in that wood, you know, so that the glue has something to bite into. That one. We just want our surfaces that are going to be glued roughed up enough so that the glue will adhere nicely. We don't want them falling apart. Really? Well, now, see, sometimes when I cut some of these pieces of wood, I'll find a spot like this. This wood had a crack in it that you couldn't really see, but as soon as I tried to sand it, this piece where the wood had already been cracked fell out of there. So that is not going to work. Going to have to come up with another piece of wood. I'll have to go cut another piece. But we'll get the rest of these scuffed up to where the sandpaper will bite in. I mean, to where the glue will bite, have something to bite into and hang on. This one doesn't look like it's cracked, so that's nice. Just roughing them up there so that they've got a place to absorb the glue. Give us a good solid bond between these pieces. You know, these knife scales will be pinned to the tang of the knife, but well, this piece here is a fair amount thicker than the others. You know, this may be enough without that other piece of wood, but we'll throw a tape measure on that and measure that and find out for sure. And if I need to cut another piece, I will, and if not, we'll glue these together the way they are and move on. Okay, so I measured these pieces of wood together like this, and I was shooting for 4 inches. This is just a hair under 4 inches. This is plenty. We'll make this work. Because I'd have to slice a whole new piece off of the slab of dark wood that I have down there like this, and I really don't want to slice that up just for one more little piece of wood. So we're going to go ahead and glue these together. And in order to do that, we need one paper towel, one bottle of fingernail polish remover, or better known as acetone, because we want to clean our surfaces now where we scuffed them up with the sandpaper. Just a light wipe on each surface with this acetone will ensure that all of our little, any little pieces of dust, sawdust, whatever, are out of there. So we have a nice clean surface in order to ensure a good bond when we apply the epoxy to these little fellas here. I think this is going to make a nice handle. I think it'll be a pretty handle, and it'll be a good solid handle. And I believe it'll work quite well for the Chinese Bowie knife. The swap meat knife, otherwise known as. Because I'm pretty sure that's where you get a knife like that. I've seen those kind of knives at swap meets and things, and they're pretty cheaply built. But I think with a little bit of good old redneck ingenuity and a little try, we can probably turn that knife into a pretty decent, at least, and usable piece of cutlery. So we need to kind of let these make sure these are dry, because the acetone will eat the glue if there's I mean, after all, you use acetone to clean up epoxy if you make a mess. So we want to give these just a second to kind of make sure that they're dry. Acetone dries fairly quickly. I'm going to run over there where I have another piece of parchment paper on the table, and we'll get some epoxy mixed up and get these glued. Okay, so here's our piece of parchment paper that we'll use to mix up our epoxy. And these are getting a little bit low, but we should have enough. I know I'm going to get that stuff on my fingers, so I'm going to go ahead and get a little bit of this on this paper towel here, so that it's sitting here ready for me to wipe this goo off of my fingers, because invariably I get it on my fingers. So let's squirt that out there like so. So I'll just go ahead and mix up the rest of this, because I don't believe that there would be enough left to be able to do much of anything else with. And we're just going to use a little toothpick here and stir the two together. Get this mixed up nicely here so that it will harden properly. And let's start smearing some glue on here. And we don't care if we make a mess and if it squeezes out of the sides or anything like that, because you know, this handle's all going to get reshaped and everything anyway, so we'll get rid of that glue with the belt grinder later on when we're actually shaping the handles with glue that squeezes out the sides and that. You want to make sure that you've got plenty of epoxy on these, because you just don't want any part of it that didn't get glued. You know, it's my motto is build big, grind small, you know. I always build my handles way over the size that I actually need them to be, because I can always grind it back off. But if you don't have enough to begin with, then you're kind of up the creek, because once your handle scales are built, it's hard to add more. And it's the same way with the glue. If you don't have enough, you know, once it's all glued together, it's too late to go back and add more glue. So need to make sure we've got plenty of glue. Let it squish out the sides. That's what the parchment paper is for. But this epoxy glue is such good stuff. This block that we'll have when we're all finished gluing these together, once this epoxy sets, that will be just as if it was one solid block of wood. Epoxy glue is very, very strong stuff, and that's why we like to use it. Because we know once that stuff sets up, even if you tried to break this handle apart, it wouldn't break where the epoxy is. It would break out pieces of the wood. You know what I mean? If you broke, if you could apply enough force to break that handle, it wouldn't break where the epoxy is. It would break the wood itself in another spot. So there they are. All glued up and mushed together. Now we'll take our trusty clamp, excuse me, and we will clamp all of this together. I want to make sure that these are all sitting down square and proper. And one handle right there. Now see what we'll do once this is I don't like that. That's not doing what I want it to do, going where I want it to go. Oh. With this epoxy, you don't have a whole lot of time to dink around. You need to get your your material where you want it, because like I say, it doesn't take very long at all for this epoxy to bite in and set up, and you better be where you want to be or you'll end up doing it all over again. And we really don't like doing things over and over again. We like to kind of get them done the first time and be done with it. Well, I think that'll be okay, because we'll trim this all up on the saw once this epoxy is all set. But what we're going to do is, once this is a solid block of wood and we've cleaned it up and trimmed it up on the saw, we're going to slice this right down the center so that we have two halves. And that way I can chisel out those insides like we talked about, the inside of each scale, and we'll glue them back together on the handle when we get to that point, and you'll never even know. Once it's all shaped, the handle is on the knife and it's all shaped and where it's going to be, you'll probably never be able to tell that block we made was ever cut in half. So very cool. We'll give that a little time to set up and continue on with more of our Chinese Bowie knife refurbishing. Okay, so while we're waiting for our epoxy to dry on that handle that I put together, I'm going to need a chisel that I can chisel out the insides where the metal tang is going to fit into the wood. And I've misplaced my small chisel. I can't find it. I don't know what I did with it. But I don't have wood chisels anyway. It was just a metal chisel. So I found this in my toolbox. It's just an old flat blade screwdriver bit that the handle's been broken off of. I would imagine somewhere along the line I whacked this with a hammer and broke it. So what I've done is I put this in the forge and just heated up the tip here, and then just gave it this slight curve. And now we'll take it over to the grinder and we'll clean this up, and I'll sharpen this, and that'll give me a tool that I can take my wood, you see, and I can all right, so, oh, you know what? I forgot my cord. I'll be right back. I guess you can't use a grinder if it isn't plugged in. Funny how things work that way, right? All right, so our grinder's plugged in. We've got our little bent screwdriver here, safety glasses on. We don't want to put an eye out or something, so let's see what we can make out of this. rust off of there and getting it a little bit cleaned up and burnt. You see a little bluing there where it got a little hot. We don't care about that right now because we're going to reheat this in the forge and give it a water quench and harden it. Anyway. Without my glasses on, I'm half blind. It's really hard to see with these safety glasses on what kind of an edge I'm getting on this. And I think that looks good. I think that's a pretty sharp edge. I think we should be able to move some wood with it. Well, maybe not. All right. So I think we need to be a little bit sharper than that. But I'll go ahead and get this sharpened up nicely and where we want it. And I'll bring you back when we're ready to harden this and quench it in the water. Okay, so what I've done is I took a little bit of the curve out of this. It was too much curve, so I straightened that back up a little bit and ground it nice and sharp. But in testing it on a piece of wood, what I've found is that I don't have anything to hang on to here. This little, it just digs into my palm and that. So I found this little piece of mild steel here in the shop. And it was longer and had kind of a sharp end on it. And I nipped that off right there. And I'm just kind of cleaning this up a little bit on the grinder. And then we're going to take these over and we're going to put it in the vise. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to weld this right to that, about like so. That'll give me something good to grip onto so that I can work my wood a little better. If you need a tool, make a tool. So that's what we're doing. We're making a tool here. And I want to clean this up just a little more. So we have a nice clean surface to weld to. So we've got our 4.5-inch angle grinder plugged in, and let's move some steel here. Okay, so here's our little block of wood that we glued together earlier. Everything's all glued together. It's a nice solid little piece of wood. Now what we're going to do, I ended up cutting my finger pretty bad over there. I didn't realize it until I saw blood all over this little tool that I made. There was blood all over it. And blood all over my hand, and so I had to go make me a little duct tape band-aid to hold that cut closed so I wouldn't be making a mess everywhere. So anyway, we're going to take this now. We're going to come in here trim all these nubs off on the bandsaw. Trim them off both sides, kind of clean this up a little bit, then we'll square it up on the table saw, and then we'll, once we get it all squared up, we'll scribe a line right down the center, and we're going to split this in two, and then I'll go on the inside, my trusty little chisel here, and we'll lay the tang of the knife on here, and we'll take our Sharpie and mark out, you know, we'll just lay the tang on there like so, and then we'll take our Sharpie and we'll just mark around the tang where it's going to sit, and then that inside that mark will be what we want to dig out with this little chisel. Okay, so we've got our bandsaw all set up here. And if for some reason, if this handle gets messed up again, I mean, I don't have to do all this gluing, I just think it's a cool look. But if this gets messed up again, I'm just going to put a solid piece of wood, I'm just going to rip a solid piece of wood in half and do it that way. Because I'm not going to go through all this gluing and everything again. This is our final attempt at a nice sectional handle like this. So here we go. Let's cut some of this wood off, clean this up. So the way that this is all going to come together is this handle with the guard on it is going to go on this knife just like that. And you see, I left this end piece long so that we could bring that down to give you something so your hand doesn't slide off so easily. And that's how she's going to go on there, and I think it'll look pretty nice. Still have the hidden tang and all of that, but a much better and more sturdy. That handle won't go anywhere when we're through with it. So let me get this cleaned up and squared up a little better on the table saw, and we'll get it ripped in half like so, and we'll start getting those cantankerous little insets, chiseled out of there with our little. So I've been working on this piece, and I've got these edges cleaned up quite nicely here, and we're going to go ahead, I think, and well, let me grind this end a little bit. This end here is what's going to go up against that guard. Well, it'll be like this. And we want that nice and smooth and clean. So let's work on this a little more. Alright guys, so we got our handle pretty much blocked out here where we want. We got our little tool made here so we can the video, I had to zoom out too far. I must have accidentally bumped it while I was toting the camera. So I don't have video of me. I had to delete that little piece of video off the camera because it was just too, everything was all zoomed in your face. But I went ahead and heated this up in the forge and quenched it in the water. So we've got a nice hardened little chisel here. And what remains to be done now is to split this, chisel out those insides, get everything fitting properly on the knife, and we should easily be able to finish it up on the next video, but I don't want my videos to drag on forever, so this one's going to already getting pretty long. By the time I get this all edited up and uploaded to YouTube, it's going to be a lengthy enough video. So stay tuned for part 3 of refurbishing a Chinese Bowie knife. And again, I thank you all for watching, and please hit that like button and subscribe and all of that good stuff. And thanks for joining me in the forge today. We'll see you again on the next one.